Jet, do you know that there are 3 things that I particularly hate?
Really?
Kids, animals, and women with attitudes.
Oh.
So tell me, Jet, why do we have all 3 of them neatly gathered in our ship?
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of the Fans Guide to Animation.
Welcome to the jungle. We got fun and games.
If you've never heard from us before, my name's Anthony, and this is my co-host.
Hi, I'm Daniel.
Hi. It's always awkward to introduce ourselves every time, but we gotta remember, there's some new listener listening right now.
Mm-hmm. So now we're on a first name basis, and we don't know your name, so you're a stranger to us. But
so now I don't feel comfortable if you're listening though now.
Stranger danger.
That's my purse. I don't know you.
Today we're going to be talking about something very special in terms of animation and anime.
Mm-hmm. A very important series.
It's that very milestone that so many people grew up with this show. Today we're going to be talking about Cowboy Bebop.
I think it's time we blow this scene. Get everybody in the stuff together. Okay, 3, 2, 1, let's jam.
Cowboy Bebop, it originally started in 1998 in Japan, and it ran for 2 seasons, a total of 26 episodes, I think. And it didn't come over here until 2001 on Adult Swim. And it was actually Adult Swim's first anime series that they put on there. This was a lot of people's gateway into what anime could be, because before that, we really only had things like Dragon Ball Z and
Pokemon came out in a couple years.
But yeah, we didn't have any anime that was really geared towards adults. There were some movies that had kind of made a name for themselves. They were more cult hits than anything.
Like some of the Ghibli movies kind of floated over here a little bit, but that was back before Ghibli was Ghibli. It was,
and there was Ghost in the Shell and Akira.
Yeah,
but those were like I said, they were more niche kind of things. So now that this show was on a big network, a lot of people were actually able to see it and discover what's good about anime, because this show is a pretty good start to what anime could be, and not just action-y, but also serious and for a even more mature audience. The story is of a group of bounty hunters. It takes place in the year 2071. Yeah, and they're all traveling together on a ship called the Bebop. Yeah, the show is it's a blend of a lot of things. Like I just said, it's a space western in some points, but it's also noir inspired too.
Yeah. Very neo-noir inspired stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like almost in the vein of something like Sin City. A lot of narration going on. A lot of people just then she walked my way. And
a lot of people talking.
She crossed my life in this way, and that the very
talking
grim,
abstractly with sad music in the background.
Yeah, just a very grim sounding narrative that happens with a lot of those neo-noir movies.
Sometimes I let matches burn down to my fingertips just to feel something, anything.
And you would think a lot of that stuff could clash, but the people who actually of course helped with the narrative and created the stories for these characters, it meshes pretty well. Because when you have something that's so tonally different as a noir film and a western, putting those together is a very big risk, let alone making it good.
It mixes the genres, but it also mixes the tone.
Exactly.
So, it's a lot of the times, we've been saying, it's sad and it's serious, but it's also funny.
It can get very campy.
Yeah, it can get very campy,
and it's great when it gets to those moments.
Yeah, some characters are just serious the whole time, and some characters are just like clowns. So yeah, speaking of the characters, I guess we'll just talk about each of them. So the main character is a guy named Spike Spiegel.
He called you a cowboy. What did he mean? What are you?
Just a humble bounty hunter, ma'am.
So he's a tall, lanky guy. He always wears a suit. He's vaguely based off of Bruce Lee a little bit.
I think they said more, from what I read, it's more of just like his fighting style. Of course, not the looks, but just the style of how he fought in his films. That's what they based on. For
Yeah,
style.
there's an episode where he actually like talks about like his hand-to-hand combat abilities and like talking about being like the water and going with the flow. It's almost directly like quoting like a Bruce Lee.
Exactly.
I'm telling you, don't tense up.
How am I gonna knock someone out if it's all limp?
It's not about strength or power. You gotta be fluid.
Huh?
You have to be like water. You see what I'm saying?
But yeah, that goes beyond just like his fighting style. He's a very like laid back guy for the most part.
The landing wheels aren't retracting.
Yeah, and the number 2 nozzle won't work either.
What? Are you for real? We can't
Oh,
land
well.
without them. I knew I should
Whatever
have come
happens,
here. I'm only 18.
happens.
I don't want to die yet. I've never even been with a woman. Somebody help!
He kind of does. He's very impulsive. He does things for the rush. He kind of has it in his blood to seek out danger.
So that's where we definitely have a lot of that noir inspiration. A lot of those types of protagonists like to find danger, like to be involved in moments where they probably shouldn't be involved with, but they do it anyway and risk their own lives every time.
The main plot of the series, it's not really like a main plot, but it's the only like continuing plot that happens throughout the series. And they all deal with Spike dealing with his past, and he has connections to a mob that he got out of and like taking revenge on his evil counterpart, I guess. And yeah, all those episodes are very, very noir. Like the most noir.
Yeah.
So they're all serious and they're all Spike based, and that's how the series ends. That's how it starts. You know. The next character, I guess, is Jet Black.
Humans were meant to work and sweat to earn a living. Those that try to get rich quick or live at the expense of others all get divine retribution somewhere along the line. That's the lesson. Unfortunately, we quickly forget the lessons we've learned, and then we have to learn them all over again.
He is the older gentleman.
They really didn't have to think too much on the name, did they?
Yeah, I know, Jet Black.
You know, it's funny when you say older, because I looked at, like, again, just reading through different articles, like random attributes of the characters. Their ages are not that big.
Yeah, he's only like 38, which is not old.
Yeah, you know, from the voice actor's perspective, it sounds like he's like a 50-year-old man.
Yeah, it does.
And he's probably seen some shit because he's hinted at a lot of stuff, and we see that.
Yeah, he has a past.
Not to get ahead of ourselves, but he's supposed to be like this gruff guy, and he's only like 30. He's barely pushing 40, so it's kind of funny.
Yeah, I know. So yeah, he's tall, muscly, bald, but he has this cool like.
He's got this cybernetic arm.
Yeah, like robot arm. He's the owner of the Bebop, so I guess technically he's like the leader of the group.
Even though Spike kind of just says, "Nah, go fuck yourself. I'm gonna do what I'm on."
Yeah, even though all the characters just do whatever.
I want to do it because it's fun. It's fun to do bad things.
He's the most level-headed of the group, which I guess they all need because they're all all the rest of them are crazy.
I guess in this sense, he's kind of the straight man.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
He also has a little bonsai tree room. That he goes to occasionally. The next character, Faye Valentine. She's the stereotypical kind of like sexy femme fatale character.
What do you want, babe? You looking for some action?
Well, you might say that. A certain kind of action.
I'm all yours.
Put your hands up. Sorry, it's not personal. This is my job.
What'd I do wrong?
It's no use playing innocent.
She wears the smallest clothing you will ever see.
I don't even know what qualifies as clothing half the time. Shit. Like.
Yeah, it's like tiny shorts and like this.
Like with suspenders.
Yeah, with suspenders. But yeah, she's.
But they at least gave her an interesting enough backstory, though. She's not like a complete and total throwaway, just fan servicey character, at least.
Yeah,
as the show goes on, we do get a lot of, again, like everybody in this damn show, pretty weird yet tragic story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think hers is like the most
I honestly
out
got
of
a lot
left
from
field.
That. Yeah, it's out of left field, but at the same time, they made it work.
Well, when we first meet her, she's a criminal. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she's got a big gambling thing, so she's a big asshole. And she does what she wants. So when you get to know like her backstory and like how she reacts to it, it's like a total like 180 on her character.
But at least it kind of shows some growth for her though, because if they would have kind of kept her that same asshole character, maybe that could have kind of killed the vibe.
Yeah, she was fun, but
they did the smart thing and gave her some development instead of just making her that femme fatale, just a-hole character that she started as. She ended up in an accident.
Yeah, she got in an accident and she was cryogenically frozen. And she woke up a couple years ago, I guess. And then some stuff happened to her, which turned her into an asshole. Because before she was like almost a blank slate because she didn't have any memories. So a lot of her episodes, which is like 2 or 3, they deal with her kind of coming to terms with remembering things or trying to find out stuff about her past that she didn't know before. And yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah,
it's definitely
interesting. It really is.
Yeah. And the last human member of the Bebop crew is Edward.
Ed is short for Edward Wong Hao Pepelu Tivuruski the Fourth. Ed made it up, you know. Nice to meet you.
Edward is kind of like your typical anime character.
Yeah, definitely the most,
the most cartoony.
Like, cartoony.
Yeah, of all of them. She's definitely the comic relief to kind of give the show some levity. And she is a little girl.
Yeah, she's like 13 to
15, something like that. And she looks like a boy, so she gets confused for being a boy a lot. And yeah, she's a hacker. She's like the best hacker on Earth, or at the time that we meet her, or in the area, or something like that. She's just like she's known as Radical Edward.
Hence why she's just kind of nuts, because she's like that mad genius almost.
Yeah. Like mad scientist a little bit.
They paint her in these shadowy looks to her in some moments when she's with the computer. She looks like a mad scientist, the way they have the effects on her.
Yeah, when you see, and they show her screen and when she's like doing all of the hacking. Now, keep in mind, this show was made in 1998.
Yeah.
So they didn't really have a good grasp on what real hacking actually looks like, so they just went crazy.
Yeah,
and they had like little fish that like were swimming through like the internet, like if the internet was like some big space that you could like swim through, and it's
weird.
It's very strange.
Yeah.
But it's fun to look at, so I don't mind it at all. And she has a connection with the last member of the Bebop, who's the only not human member of the Bebop, Ein the dog. He is a corgi. We meet him in like episode 2. I think he's like the first.
Yeah, he's the first one that comes on.
Yeah, he's the first one that comes on. Yeah. As the show goes on, the characters hop on to the Bebop like gradually. It doesn't start with all 4 of them. It only starts with Spike and
while rewatching
Jet.
this show, I thought it started that way, but coming to rewatching it, I'm like, oh yeah.
And he is a genetically modified, super intelligent corgi. You don't really get it. Yeah, you don't.
Supposedly, he has human intelligence.
Yeah, but he just acts like a dog for the most part. There is one moment where he puts on like a little headset, and he like is able to like hack better than Edward. But most of the time, he's just a cute little dog.
Now, what would have been funny is if he started to speak halfway through.
Dog? Where?
Like,
yeah, well, one of the things about the show that I like is that it doesn't go too far out of the realm of possibility. So a lot of the show, even though it's like I said, it's a sci-fi western, seems like it would be what the future would look like.
Yeah,
it's not radically different. Like they still use like real guns. They don't use like laser guns or anything.
It's legit.
There's not like any alien races. They're all human. And
even though they live on Mars and stuff, some of the characters.
And like the cities on other planets just feel like regular cities. They're not like crazy weird.
I honestly feel that's probably the way it would be. If we ever had an ability to be on Mars, I'd feel that that's the way it would be. Just regular looking places, not over the top.
You just occasionally get like a space battle. But even the ships, they have like guns on them. But everything else seems very like realistic. They even have stuff from the past that they reference from like the 90s. Like there's that one space shuttle that was there, like an old timey space shuttle, and then they had they went to a shop where he sold a lot of old like VCRs and Betamax players. So yeah, this stuff it's still grounded in that it's like not too far into the future where it's like,
but like
hard
even
to
though
connect
it's
with
like
it.
2070 whatever it is, 2071 whatever, like in a way maybe they called it right, because we're already going to be like the big magic year that a lot of movies love to use and TV shows. 2020, that's like the it year that a lot of movies have used, and we're like a year away from that.
Is it weird that when you said 2020 I thought of Barbara Walters?
A little. Just...
And I'm Barbara Walters, and this is 2020.
And yeah, that's part of what like distinguished it from a lot of the other anime at the time.
Because if you think of like Dragon Ball Z, like not to beat that or anything, I don't have anything against Dragon Ball Z. Hell, I've never seen all the show. That type of show, like clearly, it's very weird in its own way, like with its characters, but like that,
it's very out there.
Like very out there with the worlds and just like hell, those just random little planets that look like just grass balls or something. I don't know what the hell.
Like they try and like create their own universe, but yeah, Cowboy Bebop it takes place in our universe. Okay, so let's just talk about some of our favorite episodes. The one of my favorite episodes is actually the first episode. I think it does a good job of showing everybody like what the show is about, because it has a little bit of everything. It doesn't have Faye or it doesn't have Ed. It only starts out with Jet and Spike. So basically they're hunting down a bounty, and he's a drug dealer, and they have this new drug called Red Eye. Like ooh. So yeah, he stole it from like a mob or something, and yeah, he's on the run with his girlfriend, and she's pregnant. So you kind of sympathize for them a little bit, because they have a conversation like, oh, like after this we'll be able to like, you know, retire or whatever. We'll have a good life after we get rid of all of this drugs and have all this money.
Let's go, Asimov, like you promised. I want to get out of this life. I know that I can be happy on Mars.
But yeah, it's still a bounty, and there are bounty hunters, so they try not to like be emotionally invested, even though a lot of times they get emotionally invested. It culminates with Spike chasing the both of them in the spaceships, and then they get caught by the police, and then they get gunned down. So this character that in his girlfriend that you kind of like felt for, because she was only like being dragged along, you know. You see them kind of like floating in space, but you also see her, like she was shot and out of her stomach is coming more of the drugs, so she wasn't actually pregnant the whole time. So it kind of makes you like question, like, okay, maybe she wasn't as innocent as she came off to be. So
and you saw the expression on his face when she.
So yeah, at the end, he wasn't thrilled about it, but it gives you an idea of like, this is the life that they're choosing to live, because stuff like this happens. Like I said, it's real. There's not going to be like
it's a constant like up and down situation that life is.
But yeah, it gives you like just a little taste of like.
It's a really good pilot episode,
and it keeps you like engaged the whole time. Like there's the drama of that stuff happening, but there's also like Spike has like the best hand-to-hand combat like scenes I've seen in any anime. How he does it is just so cool to watch whenever he's in like a fist fight with somebody else.
Pissed off DBZ people though.
It's not like he's like Goku where he's like super strong, because
he just like yells for 30 minutes and then nope, that's just gonna alienate more people.
But yeah, it has that. It has the space stuff, and it has a little bit of noir. And
I even love the title. Looking at it, yeah, Asteroid Blues.
Yeah, Asteroid Blues.
It's such a perfect first name for the episode. Just like, if I'm not mistaken, they named a lot of the titles after like certain songs and stuff, right? Like, after genres of music as well, or songs.
The show is very inspired by and influenced by music. The first of all, the show is called Cowboy Bebop, and bebop is a form of jazz.
Yep.
And a lot of the episodes are named after either songs or they're in reference to like a type of music. Like I said, Asteroid Blues, Honky Tonk Woman, Sympathy for the Devil, Waltz for Venus, Jupiter Jazz, Bohemian Rhapsody. The score was done by the great Yoko Kanno, and they let her do basically whatever she wanted, and it turned out really well. I even read that sometimes they had heard something that she had made, not for like any specific purpose, but they had heard something that she had made, and then they based the episode around the music that she had created. And I mean, she made like the title theme.
The whole thing, it just makes you hyped to watch. Although the funny thing is, some of the episodes are so dreary and sad, so you're like, yeah, let's jam, yeah.
It gets you very like hyped up at the beginning. There's even some like songs that are actually really good that are a little more on the sad side. There's this one, like whenever Spike has a memory, they play this like soft like
I guess a music box sounds about
music
right.
box kind of sounding music. The music in here is very well integrated into the stories, and sometimes you can't think of scenes from the show without thinking of the music.
Thinking of the music, yeah.
It really does amplify like how good a movie is if the music is really good. Like it doesn't need to have good music, but
it just
if it
complements
does,
a moment,
it really it stirs up something else in you that really just adds to it. So the next episode I have is episode 5. Ballad of Fallen Angels. This is the first Spike-centric episode. It's an introduction to what the noir aspect is more about in the show. So Spike finds out about a bounty from a guy who was in the mob, the syndicate they call it, the Red Dragon. And he was kind of like a mentor. So he finds out that he was killed. And he was killed by a guy named Vicious, who is like Spike's ex-partner, I guess.
Are you gonna kill him?
I won't. You're going to do it for me. Either you kill him, or else both of you die. Those are your only options.
Vicious is kind of almost cartoonishly evil, white-haired guy in a black trench coat who has a sword and this alien crow on his shoulder. So he's basically like Maleficent. He does. Honestly, like aesthetically
doesn't match the show.
Yeah, like, aesthetically he does not really match any of the other characters in the show. He's like a little too much. Like you could have just lost like the bird. If you lost the bird, I would have been okay. But anyway, Vicious kills Spike's mentor. So he goes to get vengeance. So throughout the episode, you kind of get hints at what had happened to Spike before and like why he left. It never explains any of it. So the best part of the episode for me is at the end, like the last 10 minutes or so. Spike tracks down Vicious. For whatever reason, he's in a church. Take me to church! And I think that was a little bit of symbolism, like Spike's coming back to church, like coming back to his old life. Yeah, a lot of the show is the characters kind of like dredging up their past and dealing with that. So yeah, he gets to the church, and obviously it's filled with dudes. So there's this really good, super good, like gunfight in the church, almost John Wicky. And then obviously Spike kills everybody because the main character is always the one who's fine.
Yeah, they gotta keep him alive for the rest of the show.
Yeah, so he gets to the top and he confronts Vicious, and they both have like a standoff kind of deal. Like the church has this big stained glass circle at the top and big window. Vicious has him like by the neck or something. And then he throws him out of the window. And this is when this music starts playing. And this is when you start getting flashbacks into his past as he's like slow motion falling from the window to the ground. So it almost feels like he's about to die. This is like this typically would be the end.
Like it's it.
Yeah,
and this is probably what you thought it was the finale. So
yeah, like before I rewatched this, I had the distinct impression that this episode was actually the finale of the series, but it's only episode 5. But also, like when Spike hits the floor, he doesn't die. Like it cuts to
that
like
was another thing
it like cuts to black
and
it cuts to like a flashback again. So you assume when he hit the floor off of like a three-story drop, he would be dead. But he's not. It cuts to him like all bandaged up in the Bebop, and yeah, I don't know. I think it kind of does that thing where they like subvert expectations.
Mhm.
Like, oh, you expected this to be a finale kind of thing, but no, this is just a regular thing for us. So you're like, oh man, if this is episode 5, like what else do they have? So yeah, I love that episode. I think you could just watch that episode by itself, and I think you'd be.
It's
good.
damn near masterful. On its own.
Yeah.
For me, not so much that I'm going to step downwards, but I kind of like the back and forth that they did throughout the show. Like we were talking before we started recording. Like I love that they can go somewhere very deep and very centric around a character, and you get this little hint of feels for even these worst, terrible characters, and it's just like literally the episode after yours, episode 6, Sympathy for the Devil. That's one of the first ones that kind of caught me off guard a little bit, because I'm just like, I didn't remember this episode at all. Yeah, it's a weird one. There is a child who he was one of the best, if not the world best harmonica players of the world or something.
Hey, the kid's in the headlines. Guess he must be pretty famous, huh?
Yeah. Kid's a genius. Plays like an old pro.
And in this case, you figure out like that this little kid is not any ordinary little kid. It's so much more evil than that, and it's really disturbing and weird. And I don't even know. Spoilers, though. The little kid is actually a very, very old man, but he has the what was it? Shit.
It's like
it was a weird thing. I can't even describe it. Like it was a weird thing on how he stayed young for X amount of years.
Yeah, he was around when some kind of explosion happened.
Yeah,
and he was exposed to like this space rock or something, and it had some kind of energy or like radiation
felt like
or something like that.
They almost tried to pull it off as a magic thing or something.
Yeah, it seems very like magical.
Yeah, very supernatural. But no, it was something like what would happen to the Hulk or something. A very weird happenstance, but he hated the fact. I guess somewhere along the way, he hated the fact that he was immortal and he couldn't die, and he just was stuck as a little kid. He didn't age. He didn't.
Don't give me that crap, kid.
Sorry, but I'm not a kid.
Yeah, all kids say that.
I know what I look like, but I was alive when this place was an outpost, before the asteroids were even settled. Get the picture.
And then when Spike investigates on this bounty and like realizes, there's something up with this kid. This kid did some terrible things and conning people and doing all this. And not that it was his fault that he ended up in this terrible situation of being immortal, I guess. But then when they finally get rid of his abilities and they figure out...
Yeah, they shoot him with like a special bullet.
Yeah, and that
like
alone also weird. Yeah, it was just like, so it's a werewolf situation, huh? Okay.
Spooky, scary.
He's old, and then that moment of his last monologue, I'm just like, that's so fucking sad, though.
I see. Yes, I can finally die at last. I feel so heavy. But I finally feel at ease. Do you understand?
And other characters that have been immortal that died, because we've all seen that type of character where they get unimmortal and they die because of powers taken away or something. Like, this show somehow still makes you feel something for even as weird of a character as this was. Like, that's where I can appreciate the show. It's such a weird concept throughout all of what I've been describing. And you still feel something.
Yeah, there are some real weird episodes.
Yeah, there is some weird shit, but I don't know. This is one of the top 5 at least.
Yeah.
I think my second episode, I think that episode in particular, actually, Hard Luck Woman, close to the episode before the finale, that one actually struck me a little bit more in terms of more of a realistic, really heavy situations. This is already closer to the end of the show, and a lot of the characters are already parting ways, mainly Faye and Edward. They head back to Earth because of this thing that Faye is trying to seek out.
Where are you going, huh?
Edward, I finally remember where it is that I belong.
You belong?
Yes, Ed. You have someone waiting for you, too. There's somewhere that you belong, Edward. You should go and find out where. It's the best. Belonging is the very best thing there is.
And She takes Edward along, and they end up there realizing there's an orphanage there, and they kind of get... It's a lot of random little moments that keep happening, but the orphanage situation with a nun that explains about Edward's past, that her father was actually looking for her.
Is she from this place?
She wandered in about 5 years ago. Before I knew it, she was eating here as if that's the way it always was. Then, about 3 years ago, she wandered away again. It's your father.
Ed's father?
Mm-hmm. He came here looking for Ed about 2 months ago. He said he forgot that he put her in a daycare center and that he'd been looking for her for 7 years, hopping around the world. Oh, he's not your model father, I suppose.
And that was like the only bit of realistic situations we have with Edward, I guess. Like, she does have a parent.
Yeah, it's weird to think about. Because this whole time she's been like by herself. When the first episode she was just by herself.
I think it's even funnier though that her arc was that she wandered off 2 years ago, apparently, within this timeline.
Mm-hmm.
And then they didn't even bother to figure out what happened. Like, how does a kid just disappear? They really didn't explain it, really. I mean,
I think that's part of that's part of it. Like, she's kind of a neglected child, so she was able to does whatever she wants, but more so because people didn't care enough to take care of her.
Her father want to keep her around. When they do meet up with her father at the point of the episode, like, the father thinks it's a boy, she's a boy, and then
This is the father person.
Father?
You mean your father?
You have a father?
Thanks for taking care of my son. Or was it my daughter? Well, either way, you guys are all right.
I guess not exactly a good dad.
No, and he's just trying to do his own thing. He's having his own life and whatever he's doing. And the other big one was Faye realizing to be in the same spot, to realize that an area where she used to be, like her high school and everything else.
Mm-hmm. She was around where she actually grew up.
Yeah, and then where closer to the crash as well. Like, when it came down to her realizing a lot of her backstory, being in that place. And then I think a moment that was not so much subtle, but just like a former classmate of hers sees her.
Mm-hmm.
And she just comes up to her in a little wheelchair and just like...
Impossible. It's me, Sally Young. I was in your graduating class in high school. I was so surprised. I thought you were some kind of ghost. You look just the same as before.
It's like a 70-year-old lady.
Yeah, a 70-year-old lady.
Throughout that whole episode, though, you saw more and more glimpses of Faye's life and the accident that happened and all this imagery. And from there, like, it's just all very bittersweet. Like, she kind of runs off from her, though. I was just like, I would have loved maybe just a closing dialogue with that, but...
Yeah, I guess Faye's not exactly the kind of character to be emotional.
Yeah, no, most definitely, because that's her character. But at the same time, the fact that she was like... I think in a way they kind of left with her, like, coming to grips with that, like, that ending shot where she's just kind of by the building area.
She tracks down her home, like the address, and then she finally gets there, and there's nothing there. Yeah, the whole house had been...
And she just lies on the ground.
Yeah, basically been demolished. And there's nothing
just there. Just very sad. And then for Edward, it's more of, I guess, a bittersweet thing, not so much sad, but that's the episode where Edward parted ways, right? And yeah, she just said, she just, not even said, she just kind of took off. Like, she walked away again, and she was just going to go search for life, something like that's the type of character she was from the get-go. Just kind of walked in and out of places wherever she wanted. There was no really goodbyes or anything. It just Ein was the only one that cared.
Yeah,
Ein was the only one that was just like barking at her, and she's just like, you can't go with me. And then
You can't come with me, Ein. Edward is going someplace far, far away. Ed might not be coming back. So you better go back to the ship, Ein. Oh. Do you want to come with Ed?
And there's also a moment where you see Spike and Jet trying to deal with it in their own kind of way. Like, they had like a bunch of dumplings.
And
they were just sitting there, like they weren't speaking or anything.
The most awkward dumpling dinner
and they were both like just shoving food into their mouths, kind of like trying to outdo each other a little bit. So you could tell like they were a little bit sad about it, but they just didn't want to show it. So
it's also very bittersweet with that, because
Because they were
they
kind of a family.
So it started with a show like that, and it ended that way too, to
Mhm.
some extent. Well, Faye came back for a bit, but Ed, that was the last time we saw of her, so that was also kind of bittersweet. It's just like, hopefully she did find life. We don't know.
Yeah.
We
If
kinda
that
don't.
was the end of the series, I wouldn't have minded it. There was also a movie called Knocking on Heaven's Door. At least that's what it was called in Japan. Here it was just called Cowboy Bebop the movie, or
At
the
least
Cowboy
that's-
Bebop movie, or something like that.
At least that's what it says on my Blu-ray.
Yeah, and it takes place during the show, so it's not like a continuation. It's just kind of like another just really long episode. But yeah, it's good. It's very good. But we are going to do a separate thing for a more in-depth look at the movie itself. So if you want to see that or listen to it, I guess, you can go to our new YouTube page.
Super duper! That's nice! Way to go! Neato, gang! Yes, boy!
Where we'll be posting stuff like reviews that we want to do that aren't long enough for normal episodes, or video versions of the podcast if you can't get it on iTunes or whatever. You know, little extra bits that will keep people satisfied between full-length episodes of the podcast.
Because we know just one episode a month. We know y'all want more than that. If you ever wonder what we look like, well, you'll find out soon enough.
So the link is in the description, I believe. The link,
We'll
will,
put
like
a
I said,
link-
the
we'll
link will
put
be in
the
the
link
description.
in-
The series as a whole is highly regarded. It is considered the best anime series by a lot of people. I don't think I've ever met anybody that said they didn't like it. You can tell that there's a before Bebop and there's an after Bebop, because it really does influence a lot of how anime, not all of it, but a lot of how some of the better animes kind of tackle the use of more mature stuff, like a more cinematic kind of experience. I've seen it. I don't even remember how many times I've seen the series like full through, and it's still
I gotta say,
entertaining.
This is probably only my third time seeing it all the way through.
Mhm.
I, for one, I can watch a lot of stuff that's like can be very dreary and very sad and flat out depressing sometimes. I can watch that type of stuff, but to be honest, I think that's what kind of tuned me out of it when I was younger, because I didn't like to feel sad. I didn't, not to say that I feel like I want to feel sad now, but it was harder to watch, and I prefer comedy even to this day as a genre versus a drama.
I'm the opposite. I prefer a drama than a comedy. I like to feel sad sometimes. I think it's a little therapeutic.
Yeah, even till now, it was still a little bit harder to watch compared to some other anime I've seen so far. But that's not to deter anybody anyways, because I think that's one of the beautiful things about the show is clearly it was very realistic. It made you feel these things, whether they were happy, sad, weird, frustrating, whatever the characters were feeling. A lot of the times they conveyed it really well and made you feel what they felt. And that's a damn near amazing thing for an anime to do. And sure, a lot of anime can do that now, but back then in 1998, this was almost unheard of to have such mature elements of things like this, and especially in America. And it's like, 2001 exploded with Cowboy Bebop and just blew a lot of people's minds back then.
Yeah, I know. Everybody was a fan of it when it came out. It was a big deal. I mean, it still is a big deal.
Yeah.
But yeah, just because at the time there weren't a lot of things similar to that, so it was.
Now it could
everywhere.
be said maybe it's a dime a dozen. A lot of animes can do that now, but back then, this is arguably like the pinnacle of where that started, and it just kind of kept going ever since then.
It was also one of the last animes. I don't know if it's officially one of the last animes, but it was around the time when they stopped doing hand-drawn animation. After this point, around 2000s, they started going digital and digital coloring and all of that. So
I wonder
you
it's got some good grit to it too. Damn.
I think some episodes did have some. Obviously, there was some CG stuff because of this, space stuff.
Yeah.
But even some of the space stuff was hand drawn, which is like, how? I don't know how they did that.
Those people's hands must have been crushed afterwards.
But yeah, some episodes I think were like digitally done. But on the whole, yeah, the animation still holds up. I'm basically you would never know that it came out 20 years ago if you watched it today.
It's one of the things where that's what I was telling Eric, my brother. As I was rewatching it, he would kind of pop in and out of the room, kind of watch it for a bit, then he would leave. But I mean, I told him the same thing. I'm like, holy shit, I'm really watching this, and I'm like, this does not look like it was made 20 years ago. This looks like it could have been made today. Like, that's that good quality of just wow.
Yeah, everything is good quality in this show. Even like the voice acting, like all the voices are perfect. I think this is one of the few anime where people are kind of unanimously like, yeah, the dub is better than the sub.
The purists out there are like, you all are jerks.
But no, that I strongly disagree with this.
Those were our thoughts on Cowboy Bebop, the series. If you have not seen it, you probably have. But if you haven't seen it, check it out if you aren't very anime inclined.
Take it from someone who's a newbie when it comes to any form of anime. You would definitely have the ability to appreciate it. It's not like something as over the top as Dragon Ball Z or Yu-Gi-Oh! Or any of those more kid-friendly shows. Yeah. And I probably pissed off even more DBZ fans with that. But it's
Anthony
true.
hates Dragon Ball Z. It's official.
You ruthless, heartless bastard!
But I do like a show that's more finite.
Yeah.
It has a beginning, a middle, and an end.
And
so
even
it's
though
not
the
a
ending
huge...
is a little up in the air with some things, but we won't spoil it here. But if you've seen the show, you know what we're talking about. Yeah. It's still debated to this day.
Yeah.
So,
but it's not a huge undertaking if you're going to watch it.
Yeah.
So yeah, the website is fgapodcast.com. On the website, you can find links to our Twitter and our Instagram. Everything's just FGA Podcast. And like I said, the YouTube is going to be popping off in a little bit. So by the time this goes live, we should have also the video live talking about the movie. But yeah, keep up with that too, so that way you see some sweet vids, dude. But anyway, another episode down the tube. So yeah, we'll see you guys in the next one.
See you, Space Cowboy.
Bang.